I just love being in this room. So you know who Scott is, and you know the book he wrote. It is extremely readable and has a lot of lessons, and we're going to talk about those today. But let's start with it. So you've captured 11. Why 11?
Well, I'm a fan of the movie Spinal Tap, and if you know, you know. So one louder, that's why 11.
That is actually why?
Do you know, a funny story, when I sent in the draft of the book, Kevin Evers, who you know, who works at Harvard Business Review, the subtitle was 10 Innovations That Shaped Our Modern World. And I told Kevin, I said, you have read the book, right? Because there are 11 chapters in it, plus a conclusion. He was stuck on 10, but I said, it's got to be one louder. It's got to be epic.
That's a great reference. Anyhow, so you wrote about these 11 disruptions, and some of them are very familiar, some of them are less familiar, and they're all sort of offering lessons. How does that relate to today? I mean, you sort of captured these things through history. How should we think about that in terms of, if we're business people trying to navigate the climate today?
This is the way that I think about it. We're in a world right now that can be characterized as being shrouded in dense fog. So fog has descended. You have technologies advancing exponentially, lines between industries blurring, expectations of your customers, your colleagues, your children shifting very rapidly, and shock after shock coming after you. In fog, it's hard to know what the right thing is to do. It's obscured. As a human, your natural tendency in fog is to slow down and orient yourself, but today you've got to move faster than you ever did before. So in the book, I use history as a lens. So what can we do to see more clearly in an age where it's really hard to make sense of things? I'd argue that history and some of the timeless lessons from it can provide fiercely urgent teachings for today.
So give us one cool example from the book.
So Florence Nightingale, you might think when you hear Florence Nightingale of somebody who was a very caring nurse, and of course she was that, but she also drove deep systemic change in healthcare. She did it through data, she did it through visualization, she did it through writing, she did it through teaching. She shows us what does it take to drive system change. If you're going to change a system, you can't do a thing, you have to do a collection of things. And she drove a big movement from treatment to prevention, making sure that care quality went up. We need the same sort of thing in healthcare today, and what Florence Nightingale did in the 1850s and 1860s provides a path to do it. HR executives need to drive system change in your organizations. Florence Nightingale, again, shows the components for how to do it.
And I don't follow that. Are the Republicans trying to get rid of her now? Is that...
The Florence Nightingale.
Florence Nightingale, yeah.
No, this is, tell me more. I don't know.
No, that was just a silly joke. And effective on the sort of second beat. First beat, big failure. By the way, sorry that we kind of have our backs turned to the people who were bad over there. Okay, so Clay Christensen was your great mentor and great inspiration, and obviously, kind of made disruption, practically a household word. He described disruption, not as an upheaval, but as an opportunity. So that seems like a really healthy mindset for right now. How do you cultivate that mindset if you're leading a business?
Yeah, so first, just to make sure that we've got clear terms of reference, what is disruption? Let me just make it real by telling you quick historical facts about my family. My father was born in 1947. At that time, there is one computer in the world. It's huge. It weighs 20 tons. I'm born in 1975. At that point, there are tens of thousands of computers. They still are big, but they've gotten smaller, they've gotten simpler, they've gotten more affordable. When my daughter Holly is born in 2007, there are hundreds of millions of computers. They're in desktops and laptops. And of course, in 2007, Steve Jobs and Apple launched the iPhone. It's gone from 20 tons to 20 ounces. Now there are billions of devices around the world. This is disruption. Taking things that were complicated and expensive, making them simple and affordable, driving dynamic growth, changing the way that markets function. The key in this is recognizing that when shifts like this happen, yes, of course, there are winners and losers, but it is the driver of progress. It's what opens up markets. It's what creates new opportunities. It is the possibility mindset, the optimist that can see this. Andy Grove famously wrote, the CEO of Intel for long periods of time, only the paranoid survive. Yes, you need a bit of healthy paranoia to see the threats, to see what's coming at you, but only the optimist thrives. And disruption can be a path to optimism if you look at it in the right way. So let's talk about AI then in that context. So AI feels
to most of us like it is a disruptive technology. We're not, we all figure it's coming for us. We're not sure exactly how fast or exactly how. But then there's the study that everybody seems to have seen from MIT that said 95% of AI investments to date, anyway, are not producing a positive ROI. What do you do with that? I mean, this is different because there's sort of a sleep at the switch. This upstart technology, we're established, we don't need to worry about this. This is something else where the technology is forming, coming into view. How, from the sort of disruption perspective, should leaders be thinking about the threat/opportunity of AI?
We can spend hours talking about this, of course. I'll say just a couple of things. First, it is very clear in my mind that AI is one of these ones where you'll say there was a before, there was an after. Sir Francis Bacon in 1620 said, 3 things in world history fit this description. They changed the appearance and state of the entire world: gunpowder, printing press, and compass. AI is very clearly one of those. The key thing when you have something that truly is an epic disruption, where before and after looks really different, is the middle of it is very messy. As an example, you go back to the 1920s. The automobile was exploding in sales. Henry Ford had achieved his vision, the car for the great multitudes. Problem: cities were built not for cars, but for people and for horses. You had chaos in the streets. People were sadly dying. What did it take to get through that? Well, you needed new technology like traffic lights. You needed new norms like we turn like this when we're going around a corner so another car can do that. And you needed regulation. You needed driver's license. So we will need these things for AI as well. That can be true in your organization. That can be true globally as well. The general move now to say hands off, I think, is a horrible, horrible thing. History teaches us that we need the right guidance, we need the right regulation, we need the right approach. The one other thing I would say, I teach a class at Tuck called Gen AI and Consultative Decision Making. It's a mouthful, but half of our graduates go into consulting. So the idea is create a sandbox where they can use AI to practice being consultants. The thing that really strikes me is our students are in their late 20s. This is a pass-fail class. There is no risk involved in it. But there's still at least half of the class that goes into the room and is terrified because there's something about AI that we feel like hits our humanity. And if we adopt it too much, we lose something. So I think we have to, as business executives, recognize for all the upsides of the technology, people are really scared about it. And we have to help them through it.
Well, they're scared of it and they don't trust it. Journalists have experimented with, creating AI-generated journalism, and because we do what we do, we're very transparent. AI was involved, and the level of trust when you say AI, when you're transparent and say AI was involved, just plummets. So there's a lack of trust.
I was thinking, Adi, I didn't do this, but the book, Epic Disruptions, which is available, I brought my pen, happy to sign it if anyone wants it later on. But the book was 100% written by human. And I said, let's put a sticker like that on the cover. Yeah. But alas, we did not. But it was 100% written by human.
Yeah, congratulations. Everything you say about, or that we said about trust and about humanity, I think makes sense. I can't think of a technology, though, that did offer efficiency, quote unquote, money saving, that was not adopted. Specifically your industry, consulting, there are a lot of people who are very glibly saying, this is the end of McKinsey, this is these, ChatGPT-5, whatever. They do this really well. Not flawlessly, there are errors, but what kind of a standard is that? What do you think? Do you see a disruption in your world, the consulting world, from AI?
Yeah, for sure. So, whenever I'm asked that question, I look for 3 things. Number one, are customers showing signs they're dissatisfied? In the consulting world, you think about clients, and for sure, whether it's bringing people inside who can mimic what consultants do, demanding different fee arrangements, whatever, you see that. Number 2, is there a technology that brings different trade-offs into a marketplace? Very obviously there is. Number 3, do you have new providers emerging that are following different business models, ways to create, capture, and deliver value? You see this in spades. Now, what's different about what's going on with AI right now is it seems pretty clear that there is a benefit to having scale. Whether you're Accenture, Deloitte, McKinsey, or you're someone like Google or Meta or Apple, having money, resources, data to train the AI is actually really helpful. And the incumbents have all read Clayton Christensen and the books that I've written. They know what's going on. So I think we're going to see something where you'll see some companies that really bungle it and lose, and some companies that get it and use it to power their next generation of growth. I think you'll see a real separation in advisory work.
Yeah. For leaders of public companies, for let's say CEOs of public companies, the imperative to innovate is, sometimes pretty immediate. Your book, whether it's Gutenberg, Julia Child, innovation doesn't always happen in a, big breakthrough, right? It's sort of gradual, could be years, could be decades. How, again, back to how leaders should think about their jobs and handling innovation and technology properly, that sort of fundamental, disconnect between, the need to innovate versus the fact that some of these breakthrough things take time, take investment, take patience.
They always do.
Okay.
And this is a really important thing to remember. Disruption rewards patience and perseverance. So you heard Adi mention Julia Child, just a very short version of her story. She did not come out of the womb a great chef. No one does. The first time she cooked a meal for her husband, Paul Child, it was a disaster. It was brains simmered in red wine. I don't know, and she didn't know why she picked that, but whatever. 36 was when she started to devote herself to cooking. When she was 41, she met Simca Beck and Louisette Berthold. They had a contract to do a book, to do recipes for American chefs to cook French food. 1951, they say we're going to publish this book in 1954. It comes out in 1961, Mastering the Art of French Cooking. 2 different publishers, 1 near-death experience. And this story is true for anything you see succeed. There are false steps and fumbles and setbacks along the way. So what do leaders have to do? Leaders have to be patient. They have to recognize there are no overnight successes. It just doesn't happen. They need to also be impatient for proof points, for demonstrations, for things that show, hey, there actually is a real need here. There is real benefits here. There is something that we can do here. In the Innovator Solution, Clay Christensen said, patient for growth and patient for profits. There are various ways that you can do that, but this cannot be a scientific experiment that you're doing just for fun. There needs to be proof that what you're doing is going to pay off and patience for that ultimate result. Yeah.
So I'm assuming this is a mostly HR-related audience, or at least largely, partially. What is the role of HR and sort of everything we're talking about in kind of pushing in, an innovative agenda, having maybe those sort of parallel, short-term, long-term foci? What's the role of HR in making sure this rolls out properly?
So I'm not just saying this because this is an HR crowd. This is what I fundamentally believe. HR's role is indispensable. So HR's role is making sure
he will be selling books later. But he means it.
HR is so selecting the right people. So one of the things that research shows very clearly is most of the things that set innovators apart from those who don't innovate is not their DNA. It's the behaviors that they follow. But you can find people who are more predisposed to be curious, to be collaborative, to be customer-focused, to be good at experimentation. So getting the right people in. Making sure that your organization is tolerant for what happens when you innovate, which is there will be setbacks and struggles and fumbles and failures. Roger Federer was the graduation speaker at Dartmouth College, my school, last year. He gave this great talk where he said, I won 80% of my singles matches, but only 54% of the points that I played. Great people are not great in tennis because they win every point, but it's because they lose and lose and lose again, and they know how to recover. They know how to deal with it. Your organization needs the same thing. Finally, you need to make sure that you've got the systems and structures in place that enable people to have the long-term orientation, to have the patience, to have the tolerance to get the full benefits of innovation. You can't do any of this without HR doing the things that HR should do.
I saw that Federer thing. Has anyone double-checked the math? I mean, it's out there, so probably they have, but that means like every game is going to deuce. He's barely pulling it out.
This is the thing, a small difference, you look at James Cleary in Atomic Habits, you get 1% better every day, you compound it, it makes a big, 50% is a lot different than 51, 2, 3, 4. Those 4 percentage points really matter. And it's one of my favorite clips to show. I've got 4 kids. The 14-year-old Harry, who plays basketball, has memorized the 2-minute clip just to point, because every time he's got a bad basketball game, click, we watch it again.
Yeah.
It's an indispensable message.
That's great. So you use the term ghosts to describe the very present but often invisible resistance to sort of change that has to happen, innovation that has to happen. How are you feeling about the presence of kind of ghosts these days? Whether it's in regards to AI or other imperatives to kind of change.
Well, we are 10 days away from Halloween, so I'm feeling appropriately terrified. So the basic idea is the things that hold your organization back from doing different things are invisible, but incredibly important. In homage to Charles Dickens, there are 3 types of ghosts you need to think about. And I'll use AI as an example because I think it's very pertinent. There are the ghosts of the past. They're the traumas that your organization hasn't gotten over. I was with a great big company a couple months ago where all they could talk about when they were talking about their future installation of AI was the past IT project that had gone horribly wrong. Nobody was around to actually do it, but that's all the people were talking about. So you got to understand that, the past traumas. Present patterns. These are the invisible things that you do that you're not aware of, but an outsider can spot them. They're the things that are the inertial pull that make it hard for those experiments that people are doing with AI to succeed because you're fighting against the established patterns. Then the most pertinent one in my view for AI, the future fears. The worries that if you do adopt, you do push, you do change, you will invalidate who you are, you will invalidate the identity of the organization. Every organization has these ghosts. You have to consciously go and exercise them through rituals. Here's one. Airbnb has a ritual that it follows called elephants, dead fish, and vomit. I love the name, so I will say it again. Elephants, dead fish, and vomit. Elephants. What are the big things that nobody's talking about? Dead fish. What are the things that are in the corner of the room? I'm not pointing to anyone who is over there consciously, but that are stinking the room up that we really got to get out of here? Vomit. What's the stuff that you just need to say? You just need to get off your chest before you get into a discussion. A very short ritual that helps to nip the ghosts in the bud.
Yeah, love that. I can't remember if it's your phrase or Clay Christensen's phrase that every big idea starts out partly right and partly wrong. So yours is?
It's mine, but I stole it from one of my colleagues. But I'll take credit for it. But yeah, good artist copies, great artist steals. Brad Gamble that first.
That's a hot mic. People can actually hear that. But okay, how should business leaders design their organizations, so that they really truly can experiment meaningfully without kind of betting the company at the start?
I think the key word there, Adi, is what you said. It's the word experiment. It's recognizing that when you're trying something new, it's not chips all in. Jeff Bezos, in his 2015 letter to shareholders, said, at Amazon, we think about 2 different types of decisions. Type 1 decisions are one-way doors. You can't go back through the other side. You go and make a huge acquisition, you do a huge IT install, you cannot undo it. You do those things very slowly, very carefully. It's high judgment, individuals everywhere that's getting lots of input as they decide. Type 2 decisions, 2-way doors. You can undo it. You don't like it, no problem, you could do it again. Those decisions are made quickly. They're made locally. They're made by people who have earned the right to make those decisions. Experiments should be like that. Now, there are great principles for good experimentation. Your publication has run lots of articles. Stephen Tomke, I think, has the best writing on the topic. Mm-hmm. But the idea is the same thing that Sir Francis Bacon taught us in 1620, the scientific method. We've got a hypothesis. We go and design an experiment to test it. We go and measure it, and we do something with the results. It's not that complicated. We've been doing this for 500 years, 400 years, 405 years, 405 years. We forget that discipline when we're inside organizations, but that's really all it is.
So I interviewed Brené Brown today for a podcast that will air later, and I asked her this question. I want to ask you the same question. So, I'm from Harvard Business Review. We've been around more than 100 years. She's been writing bestseller books, for decades. So have you. So have a lot of smart people. They've been doing the research. There's a lot of best practice, fact-based, research-based, how to run a company effectively, how to be a good leader, and yet we're really bad at all these things. Why are we not better at all these things? Why is it so difficult to kind of be a good leader, be a good manager, run a company effectively?
Well, I think Brené's work here is so important, as is the work by Amy Edmondson and Adam Grant and Wendy Smith, who are the people that I really look to for being kind of the pioneers of the next generation. I think the core of the problem is what we have done for the last few decades is we have over-indexed on the technical part of the problem. And what I mean by the technical part of the problem is the systems that we put in place, the strategies that we follow, the choices that we make, the resources that we allocate, all the kind of hard decisions we make. And we have underinvested on the adaptive or human part of the problem. And when you're dealing with a complex adaptive system like an organization is, you really have to do all the things that Brené writes about. But it's really hard because you are now dealing with something where you essentially have strategy and innovation and behavioral economics and system psychodynamics and psychiatry and lots of things come together, and it can get really uncomfortable. But that's the frontier that I think we collectively have to push if we're going to address some of the issues that have made business so hard. And I think we're getting a lot better at it, but I think there's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah. So maybe following on that, so you've been studying disruption, you've consulted with a lot of companies, you've seen who's succeeded and who's failed. What is the maybe single most important characteristic of leaders who successfully ride the wave of a kind of, disruptive threat in innovation opportunity? What characteristic stands out?
This is something that both Brené Brown and I would agree with. If you have read her newest book, she said she wanted to subtitle it about paradoxes, and ultimately her publisher said no. It should have been, because that's what it's all about. It's about finding ways to transcend seemingly polarizing or paralyzing paradoxes. And let me do that in a way that's plain English with a story. So one of my good friends, he was a client back when I was a consultant, now a friend, is a guy named Carl Ron. Carl Ron worked at Procter & Gamble. He was the head of R&D for a couple different divisions. If you've ever used Swiffer or Febreze or used a Mr. Clean product in the last 20 years, you can thank Carl Ron. He's driven disruptive growth in a few different places. And his mindset, his possibility mindset is what you need. This is the way he described it to me. He said, you can often feel these tensions, these things that feel like either or, and they feel like they constrain you. When I see them, I get energized by them because I see the possibility. And by metaphor, he said, look at a rainbow. A rainbow is sun and rain coming together. There's tension, there's paradox in it, but that tension and paradoxes produces something of beauty. So he said, I just go and look for rainbows. And that mindset, that the things that we feel like, either we focus on profits or we focus on our purpose, either we are meritocratic or we think about providing diversity, equity, and inclusion, either we're good for, et cetera, et cetera. They don't have to be either ors. Those things are things that you can do both when you find the beautiful combination of the rainbow.
Yeah. All right, so we have about 45 seconds left. I'd love to get kind of, a very short, inspiring anecdote from the book. You did Florence Nightingale, which I came back with a really awesome joke after that, so we could come back to that. But just sort of one quick inspirational story from the book.
It'll start with not inspiration. 1548, one of my favorite finds in the historical research, King Edward VI issued a proclamation. It was probably written by his handlers because he was 10 years old at the time, but the proclamation was against those that doeth innovate. The king banned innovation. Now, why would the king do that? Well, what do innovators do?